You look at the time on your phone, you check your calendar, it just feels right, natural, like it's always been this way. But what if I told you that's not true at all? Our entire idea of time, it's a piece of technology, a totally invisible architecture built by people who lived thousands of years ago, empires, priests, and astronomers. So you know what? Let's start taking it apart and see how it was built.
I mean, think about it. It seems like a pretty simple question, right? But the answer? Well, it's anything but simple. We use a decimal base 10 system for pretty much everything else. So why is time the odd one out? Well, the reason isn't about logic. It's buried deep in thousands of years of history. And that right there is the key. Every single tick of your watch, every time you flip the calendar page, it's like an echo from a world that's long gone. Our whole system for keeping time is basically a museum. It's a historical artifact that holds the ideas of these incredible ancient civilizations. So come on, let's pull back the face of that clock and see what's really hiding in there.
All right, first up, the hour. You might think it's just an hour, but it's not a single invention at all. It's actually this incredible piece of hybrid tech. Seriously, it's a mashup of two totally different systems, one from ancient Egypt, one from Babylon, that got smashed together by some seriously smart Greek scientists.
Okay, think of it like a car. The Egyptians built the chassis, the container, right? That's our 24-hour day, which they figured out just by watching the sun and stars. But the engine, the powerful 60-minute system that makes the whole thing run, that's all thanks to the mathematical genius of the Babylonians.
Yeah, the Babylonians used what's called a base 60 or sexagesimal system. Now we use base 10, right? Probably because, well, we've got 10 fingers. Makes sense. So why in the world would they pick 60? It seems so random. But it turns out they had a really, really good reason.
Okay, get this. The number 60 is special. It's what mathematicians call a superior, highly composite number. In plain English, that means you can divide it cleanly by a whole bunch of other numbers. Look at all those divisors. This made doing math with fractions unbelievably easy, especially when you don't have a calculator. Think about it. In our system, 1 divided by 3 is that messy, repeating 0.333, right? But in their base 60 system, a third is just 20. Clean. Simple. This was awesome for buying and selling. But for astronomy, it was an absolute game changer. So while the Babylonians were geeking out on math, the Egyptians were over here solving a completely different puzzle. During the day, they used these clever shadow clocks to split the daylight into 12 chunks. And then at night, they watched the sky and tracked 12 specific groups of stars they called decans. So you've got 12 hours for the day, 12 hours for the night, and boom, there's your 24-hour cycle, the same one we're using right now.
But there was a big problem with this early system. A huge one, actually. An Egyptian hour wasn't a fixed amount of time. It was just 1/12 of the daylight. So what does that mean? Well, an hour in the summer, when the days are long, was way longer than an hour in the winter. It wasn't consistent. It took those Greek astronomers to come along and say, okay, wait a minute. Let's make an hour a fixed mathematical thing, exactly 1/24 of a full day, no matter the season. And that single change is what made modern scientific timekeeping even possible.
Okay, so that's the hour. Now let's move on to the week. This is where things get even more interesting, because unlike the day, which is based on the Earth's spin, or the year, based on its orbit, the 7-day week, it has no obvious link to astronomy at all. It's a purely human invention, a wild mix of astrology, religion, and straight-up Roman bureaucracy.
So, why 7 days? Well, that number comes from, you guessed it, the Babylonians again. They looked up at the night sky and saw that while most stars stayed put, 7 bodies seemed to wander around. You had the sun, the moon, and the 5 planets you can see with the naked eye. To them, these weren't just planets, they were powerful gods, and it just made sense that each of these gods should get to rule over one day of the week.
But at the very same time, a totally different idea of the week was bubbling up. The Hebrew week has nothing to do with planets. It's purely religious, based on the creation story in Genesis. And here's the really important part, it's a continuous, unbroken cycle. It doesn't reset with the moon or anything. It's a rhythm that's all about faith and tradition, completely separate from the stars. And you can see the journey of the week right here in our language. It's amazing. So the Romans took that Babylonian planetary week, but they swapped in their own gods, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus. Then, as the Roman Empire expanded, Germanic tribes up north adopted the system, but they swapped in their gods. So the god Teal replaced Mars, and we got Tuesday. Woden replaced Mercury, giving us Wednesday. Thor for Jupiter, you get it, Thursday. Our weekday names are literally fossils of this ancient game of telephone. So you've got all these different ideas floating around, astrology, religion. But for them to merge into the week we know, it took one powerful guy at one specific moment in time. The year is 321 CE, and the Roman Emperor, Constantine, makes a decision that will lock in the 7-day week for the next 1700 years.
What did he do? He declared Sunday, the Day Solis, or Day of the Sun, an official day of rest for the entire Roman Empire. Now, this was an absolutely brilliant political move. Why? Because it made everyone happy. It worked for the pagans who worshiped the sun god, and it worked for the growing number of Christians who saw Sunday as their holy day. It created a predictable rhythm for a massive, chaotic empire, and honestly, we've been living in that rhythm ever since.
All right, last piece of the puzzle, the year. Have you ever stopped to think why the new year starts on January 1st? It's not the winter solstice, it's not an equinox, it has absolutely zero to do with astronomy. The answer? It's all about Roman politics and power.
Believe it or not, the original Roman calendar started in March, the month of Mars, the god of war. And for a society built on farming and fighting, that made perfect sense. You can still see the ghost of that old calendar in our month names today. September, October, November, December. Those names literally just mean 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th month. Kind of blows your mind, right?
So, obviously that 10-month calendar didn't quite work. It went through a bunch of major updates. First, they tacked on January and February. Then, in 1530 BCE, Rome decided to move the start of the official government year to January 1st, the month named for Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings. A good fit. But the biggest overhaul of all came from none other than Julius Caesar.
By the time Caesar came to power, the Roman calendar was an absolute train wreck. It was a mess. Politicians were literally adding days and months to stay in office longer. So to fix it, to get everything lined up with the seasons again, Caesar had to do something drastic. He created one single year that was, wait for it, 445 days long. No wonder they called it the last year of confusion. And out of that chaos came the Julian calendar. This was a purely solar calendar, and it made January 1st the official start of the year for everyone in the empire. And you have to understand, this wasn't just about making things tidy. It was an act of power. It was Rome stamping its authority on time itself, imposing its order on the entire known world. Now, Caesar's calendar was brilliant, but it wasn't perfect. It had one tiny little flaw. It was about 11 minutes too long each year. Now, 11 minutes, that doesn't sound like a big deal, right? But over hundreds of years, it really adds up. By the 1500s, the calendar had drifted by 10 whole days. This was a huge problem, especially for the church trying to figure out the date for Easter. So it needed one last little correction from Pope Gregory XIII, which gave us the Gregorian calendar, the very same one that's on your phone right now. So when you put it all together, you see it, right? The time that we all live by, it's not some law of nature like gravity. It is one of the most incredible, complex, and invisible inventions of human civilization. Think about the ingredients. We've got the mathematical genius from Babylon, the astronomical observation from Egypt, the theological framework from the Hebrews, and then the whole thing was packaged and standardized for the world by the raw power of Rome. It's this amazing cultural recipe. So really, the next time you glance at your watch or check a date on your calendar, just take a second and remember what you're actually looking at. It's not just a tool for telling time. It's a device that holds thousands of years of human history in its gears. It's a masterpiece of math, astronomy, religion, and empire. And all this leaves me with one final question. The people who built the time we use today, they were emperors and priests. They literally shaped reality to fit their worldview. So, as our world gets more digital, more connected, who are the new architects of time?